How did the Plants vs. Zombies movie get turned into the Boss Baby of all things? Yes, you heard me right. The Boss Baby was originally supposed to be a Plants vs. Zombies movie. But how did that happen? Well, let's dive into it. In 2013, Sony announced that it was officially making a Plants vs. Zombies movie. The project was obviously based on the hit franchise that we all know and love. And at this point, PvZ had multiple mainstream games that they had, and they had even announced that Garden Warfare was coming out later that year. Basically, it was the peak time to release a PvZ film. There is no doubt about that. It was the time, if there was ever a time, to release one. The movie was essentially planned to be a comedy and an animated version of the original game. They even had Alan Covert, who is a person who worked pretty closely with Adam Sandler, as the producer on this film. In 2014, though, the film started to have some development problems. There were some Sony emails that were leaked, and they revealed that the production team was not very happy with where the product was going. Essentially, they had some script concerns, some concerns about the tone of the film, and lastly, how they would adapt nonverbal plant characters to being main characters if they couldn't talk. Because of all of these reasons, the project then started to stall pretty hard, and it was looking unlikely that it was going to go to active production. Meanwhile, Sony's animation team decided that they needed something more reliable and more marketable for their brand. And that's where, in 2015, the Boss Baby officially entered production at DreamWorks. Not too long after production, they started getting things rolling. The first thing they did, they got Alec Baldwin casted, which surprisingly was something that they hadn't even done for the PvZ movie, as that had literally nobody casted at that point. The concept was simple, dialogue-driven, and a lot easier to market than the PvZ movie. So whenever it came to production, it was easier to cast people, and it was easier to write scripts and just get things going overall. And as PvZ stalled, the Boss Baby movie just moved steadily through their development. And that's where, in March 2017, the Boss Baby was officially released to theaters worldwide. It became a major box office hit, netting over $500 million. Wow. It also received an Academy Award nomination for being the best animated feature. I know, shocking. Meanwhile, the PvZ movie just quietly disappeared from Sony's active slate and just kind of got pushed to the side and just sort of shelved to be continued later on. So what happened to the PvZ movie exactly? Well, like I said, it wasn't ever officially canceled, but it was shelved. They basically just put it to the side and were like, yeah, we'll get back to it later. Don't know when, but at some point maybe. At that point, there were no casting announcements, no production start, no updated release date. And over time, it was replaced on Sony's priority list over and over again by safer and safer things. Essentially, PvZ had lost that priority because it had so many problems that other films like The Boss Baby just didn't have. Firstly, it was a hard-to-adapt concept. I mean, you have plants and zombies who can't really talk, and the most main character that you can pull out of it is Crazy Dave, and he also doesn't talk very well. There was the fact that there was kind of shifting popularity, especially at that time. It was 2017. The PvZ franchise started to decline in its popularity. It wasn't like 2012, 2013, where you were seeing it all over the place. Besides Garden Warfare, it really didn't have much clout at that point. And last but not least, good old EA was known for being extremely inconsistent in their handling of the PvZ brand. So for Sony, they just felt like overall, because of these three things combined, it was just way too much of a gamble. So yes, the Boss Baby effectively replaced the PvZ movie. It essentially showed to Sony that going with safer and easier to animate things were just the better thing in the long term, and that the PvZ movie was just going to be way too complicated, and even if it would have been worth it, it just completely passed the time that it would have been worth it. But what's important to note is that we shouldn't necessarily blame the Boss Baby. It wasn't really the Boss Baby or the production team's fault that it ended up replacing the PvZ movie. It was just simply the easier movie to adapt, so it's kind of on Sony for not wanting to go out and explore this way harder movie to make, and honestly, I can't blame them for not wanting to do that. But who would have thought that a movie about a baby would be more coherent than a movie starring Crazy Dave?